Hi guys, it's Cassim and welcome back again to this series entitled Journal Entries. So I wanted to continue down this path and down this journey of sharing my journal entries, basically things that I've written down, things that I've been thinking about, things that I've read or things that I've been told that I found to be really interesting. And I wanted to do this because I want to, in some way, inspire you to start journaling. I want to inspire you to go on and start your own journey of writing down your notes. I very much believe that as a man, particularly as men, one of the things, the elements of wisdom that is really important is that it's important for me and you as a man to reach higher levels of wisdom. And one of the things that I've learned, particularly when I've been studying people who've achieved greatness, so the likes of people like Nelson Mandela, the likes of people like Tony Robbins, the likes of people like Oprah, people who've really reached the highest echelons of wisdom. When I start studying some of the prophets, Jesus, Gandhi, I read the Bhagavad Gita, I'm looking at people who've reached the highest levels of what it means to be a human being. One of the things that I have learned, which I didn't know before, is it is impossible for you as a male, as a man, to consider yourself successful unless you have a successor. And the reason why, and this is part of the reason why I'm doing these journal entries to try and inspire you and try and encourage you to go down this path, is that if every single thing that you've learned, if you were to die tomorrow and you've not shared it with somebody, you've not passed it on to your kids, your cousin, your wife, you haven't wrote it down, you haven't journaled it, basically everything that you've learned dies with you. And so what I've learned, particularly as a man, is that it's really, really important for us to begin to reflect on our lives. It's really important for us to look at our lives and say, okay, where have I been? What have I learned? What lessons can I pass on to my godchildren, to my brother, to my sister? For example, if you've become a millionaire, if you do not go back and teach somebody else how to become a millionaire, then what the hell are you doing with your life? What is the whole point of you accomplishing something only to hoard it? And shall I tell you the other reason as to why I wanted to do this? Many of you will know that I study two questions. Number one, how do you get what you want? How do you start from the bottom and rise to the top? And number two is, how do you achieve that and basically still end up a good person? And one of the things that I notice, particularly when people reach the higher echelons of life. So for example, when somebody has grown up their entire life being poor, if they get money, typically speaking, you will hear this kind of phrase. You'll hear people say something like, don't forget where you came from. And I always heard this comment, but I didn't understand why people would say, always remember where you came from. And what happens is, and this is what I found, the higher and higher you rise in any area of life, whether that be the fact that your parents, and there is basically a history of people divorcing in your family, and you've been the first one to not get divorced, and you've managed to have a marriage which is like 40 years long, what tends to happen is we tend to not want to go back to the circumstances where we came from. If we came from a cancer estate, we want to move as far away from a cancer estate as possible, which usually means that we detach from where we came from. And so instead of us obviously rising from those ashes and going to heaven and going to a higher version of ourselves, and then going back and teaching other people the principles that allowed us to be able to reach our levels, we basically stay far away. This is part of the reason why so many people get angry with rich people, because rich people become detached. When you accumulate huge amounts of wealth, you don't understand the problems of a normal person because it doesn't occur to you. When for example, I've met people who can buy anything they want, like literally anything. There is no limits, right? And when you are down in a position where you're paycheck to paycheck, it is even comprehensible for you to even comprehend that there are people out there who don't even have to worry about their money, that they can buy anything, that they have everything paid for. It is unheard of, right? And so I hope that in some way, when I share these journal entries with you, I can inspire you to start journaling. Go and get yourself a journal. Go on Amazon I said yesterday in a video that the cheapest. I went and looked on Amazon, and on Amazon the cheapest journal that they have is 16p, and the cost to deliver it is £3.19. So basically, for £3.35, you can buy yourself a journal where you can write down your notes, you can refine your philosophy, you can start thinking about the bigger questions about life. You can start writing down, where am I going with life? What is important to me? What do I want for my children? What do I want the next decade of my life to look like? Because when you start doing this, it shows that you're a serious person. And all of a sudden, this is how you begin to become a leader, right? Not a leader in terms of in business, but I'm talking about a leader in your community, a leader of your family, right? Part of manhood requires that you have a vision for your family. But how can you have a vision for your family if you've never shared it with your wife, if you've never shared it with your missus, if you've never shared it with your children? Sat down with your children and said to them, guys, I want us all to build a vision for where we want this family to be in the next 10 years. Do we want to have spent, I don't know, 7 weekends every year on a family outing, right? Do we want to, you may be with your missus and say, right, babes, in the next year, what I want to do is I want us to go and create 10 special moments, right? 10 moments where we can look back at our relationship in 50 years and say, wow, that's what defined us. Do you see what I mean? All of a sudden, there is a magic about life that begins to happen in your life. So I hope that kind of gives you a background as to why I wanted to do these journal entries. So let's go into the 3 journal entries which I wanted to share with you that I've wrote down this week. So the first thing that I wrote down this week is that always remember to open your heart to destiny. A couple of days ago, I was watching a film, and the film made me write down something that I was thinking about, which is that the everyday reality of life can start to overtake the fairy tale. I was doing some data and some research, and I found that basically the first year, this was actually shocking for me, that the first year of marriage is the hardest year of a couple's relationship. And that was a bit weird to me, because I would have thought, if you've been together for like 7 years and now you've decided to get married and you've just gone on your honeymoon, why would the first year be difficult? It should be surely like the best year, right? But according to the data and according for me speaking to loads of people, the first year of marriage is a nightmare. And what ends up, and the reason why it is because for months and for years, you've dreamt of this fairy tale. You've dreamt of what you think marriage is going to be like. But what happens is, you then in that first year have to sort out your money, you have to start budgeting, you have to try and figure out how do you co-live together, are you going to have your pensions together, are you going to start investing, you got to think about, how much money do we spend on shopping, meaning that all of a sudden the reality of life overtakes this fairy tale. You thought that the marriage was going to be amazing, you thought it was going to be like this, but actually you're bogged down in the really boring stuff. So for example, in that first year, you might buy a house, right? And all of a sudden you're now having to deal with things like wills. A will is really boring. It's really like laborious. You're talking about things like to do with your death, and you're like, well, we've just got married. Why the hell are we talking about when we're going to die? How depressing. Do you see what I'm saying? In that first year, you might be starting to try to have a child, and all of a sudden you've now realized, holy crap, one of us isn't got enough eggs. And now you have to go to hospital. You have to now speak about things from your past. You have to think about your family history, which is not really things that you thought about. You go to the doctor's appointment and the doctor has to ask you about your people in your family. Is there a history of cancer? Is there a history of depression in your family? And all of a sudden, do you see what I mean? That kind of reality of life all of a sudden overtakes the magic of life. And so what I would encourage you to do, and which is what I was thinking about, is that you want to begin to start to open your heart to the magic of life. Because if you begin to think, I think you can spend so much time, and I think a lot of us do, we spend so much of our life defending our reputation, defending our ego, defending our history, defending the accomplishments or the image that we've built up, that we end up never creating anything. We never leave room for us to grow. We never leave room for us to be able to mold and begin to reach higher levels of ourselves. Let me give you a perfect example of what I mean by this. So they obviously, when you have a couple that's just come together in a relationship, they may have been brought up from very different backgrounds, very different families. One of them may have sat at the dinner table, and the other one may have. So when they were growing up, they always sat at the dinner table during dinner time. The other one, they always had takeaway, or they sat in front of the and watch a telly, and they watch EastEnders every single day. And all of a sudden, you now have these two individuals coming together, and you can lock yourself so much in this is the way things are, this is the way things have to be done, that you never open yourself up to what would us perhaps having a ritual bring to our life. For example, I interviewed a couple, and they said to me that one of them never, when they were growing up, they never had like takeaways. But now their missus, with their family, their missus has a ritual where every Tuesday they would take an Indian. They would have like an Indian takeaway. And this now, all of a sudden, he said, I opened myself up to for me and my missus having our own ritual, right? Where we would have whatever it was. I can't even remember what it was, but I remember that he was saying this to me. And you can create your own ritual. Does that make sense what I mean by that? And I think I just think so many of us, we've closed ourselves up to our hearts out, to our destiny, to what is possible for us. You know, that may be as simple as, even in your life, as simple as, okay, your entire life you've always thought that you were gonna, I don't know, be an accountant, but now you've got to the point where you've now all of a sudden taken on children, or you've even thought you're never going to have kids, but now the woman you're in love with has children, and now you've become a step parent, and you're like, I've never even wanted to become a father. But what I would encourage you to do is open yourself up, go with the flow, see what could happen on the other side of you reinventing yourself, of you reimagining and expanding your view of what you thought life should be like. I believe if you can do that, it just creates like a magic of life. It just creates an exceptional kind of life when you begin to live your life based on that kind of principle. I don't know. It's your life anyway. You've got to decide what you want to do with it. But that's what I was thinking of. The second thing that I wrote down in my journal is without the invisible, like destiny, passion, fate, coincidence, life becomes stale. And I wrote down some examples of what I mean by this, to use metaphorically. I wrote down that it's like seeing the world in black and white your entire life. It's like eating but not being able to taste the food that you're eating. It's like putting your hands next to a fireplace on a cold evening but not being able to feel the heat. I wrote down that it's like having data but for the data not to have any utility. I love something that I once heard Will Smith say. Will Smith said that I want the world to be better because I was here. There is something magical about life when you stop living your life based on facts, on what makes sense, on what is logical, and you begin to flow with life. To use a metaphor for this, so many of us men particularly, instead of streaming downstream and going with the flow of the river, many of us want to swim against the current. We want to swim upstream. And this, yes, absolutely, you're unique, and yeah, you're going your own way. But the issue is you're going against the as-isness of life. You're trying to push against what is, and it doesn't allow you room to breathe. You can spend so much of your time in this kind of gap where you're constantly having to make things work, having to make things make sense, that actually you forget to live. There was an interesting thing where I was coaching a guy, and he was saying to me, me and my missus, we get into loads of problems because I'm an accountant, and it's all about the figures, and it's all about saving, and all the time, all she wants to do is she wants to spend money, she wants to redo the house, she wants to go on holiday, she wants to do this. And I'm like, babes, there isn't a budget for it. There isn't money for it. We can't do that. We're trying to do this. And I said to him, give me an example of what it is your missus is wanting. So sometimes he says, well, sometimes she'll want to buy herself some shoes. And I say, okay, well, how much do the shoes typically cost? And he says, well, the shoes sometimes cost £50, sometimes they cost £100. And I say, would her spending £100 out of your budget really impact your income or your actual budget? And he was like, well, no, but that's not what we agreed on. That's not what the budget is. And I said, the whole reason why you have the budget, the whole reason why you have the income, and you're trying to maintain, some kind of stability with your finances, is so that you can have the freedom to live. You're not doing the budget for the purpose of just doing the budget. You're doing the budget because you want to live. You want to have an incredible life. And you're so preoccupied with the numbers and preoccupied with this doesn't make sense and that we didn't agree on that in the budget, that you are forgetting to live. You're forgetting to have magic in your life. You're forgetting to have spontaneity. You're forgetting to have any kind of uncertainty in your life. And so as people, one of the things, and this is the lesson that I've learned, is absolutely there is an element where you've got to be logical, and things have got to make sense, and you've got to go to work. But you know what? Sometimes you've got to actually create magic. And that magic might come in the sense that you all of a sudden just start changing the intention that you have when you are with people. So I was coaching a guy who I work with, and I was saying to him, basically part-time I work in a shop. And this guy was, there was a guy on the checkouts, and people would come into the shop. And I was watching him, and he would just basically scan the things and give the people the money, and the people paid, and they went on. And I said to him, Jaden, let me ask you this question. What were you thinking about when you were serving the people? And he was like, I don't know, whatever. And I was like, can I make a suggestion? This is just a suggestion, but when you're serving the people, why don't you have the intention and what I call a shadow belief in the back of your mind, that I'm going to make sure that this person, when I serve them, I give them the best experience of this entire day. Have that running as the tape in the back of your head. And all of a sudden, there was an energy, an uplift of energy, a higher frequency which Jaden was operating from. People started saying, God, you're so positive. And that came from as simple as just simply changing the intention, which all of a sudden created magic. It's such a small spark, a small thing that you're doing, but it just changes the way in which you operate. But the other thing that I think is really important is that when you begin to do this, you begin to connect with people. You begin to connect with the world around you. You begin to realize that your life is actually much bigger than just about you. And that just creates, I don't know, I've just found that when people are operating from a space where they are living from spontaneity, they're living from magic, they're living from a sense of destiny, a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning. For example, I was talking to this guy, and I was saying to him, you can do your job, but do your job. He was a sales guy in recruitment. And I said to him, instead of you doing this job and your job is to recruit people and to make money, why don't you go to work and let what you do be about, I am going to ensure that I find people the best possible position for them based on their circumstances. That's my mission. My mission isn't to make as much money as I can or to fill as many spots as I can, but I'm going to help people and assist people in finding the best possible position for them that will elevate them and allow them to live the kind of life that they want to live. And I said, so in order to do that, you're going to need to start asking people deeper questions. For example, where do they hope to be in 10 years? What's their career ladder they're trying to go on? And I said, when you begin to do that, you connect with people on a deeper level. All of a sudden, you show people that you care about them. And there is a magic, there is a higher level of living that happens when you begin to do that. So that's what I shared with him. And again, your life, you decide what you want to do with that. The last thing that I want to share with you today that I wrote in my journal is that I wrote down that I hear people talking about their family and friends and they say that they've changed. But I thank God that people can change. And the reason why I say this is because some of us have somebody who we know who is a lowlife, but is a CEO in waiting. We know somebody who at the moment is not anything significant, but they're a father in waiting. They're a millionaire in waiting. They could be your children's godparent in waiting. They could be your first investor in your company in waiting. I think there is a tendency for us as humans to go through life and basically cage people into who we think they are based on the way that they've been operating, based on the way that they've lived their life. And for me, one of the things that I'm constantly having to work on is, Cassim, see people for who they can be. Stop judging everybody. Stop thinking that everybody is the same. Stop thinking that just because someone has a history of this and this and this, and their family has a history of this, this and this, that it means that that's going to be their destiny. Because people can change. People can turn their life around. Just because somebody has been really bad with money for the last 10 years of their life and they've got into gambling, it doesn't mean that that person cannot now spend the next 10 years becoming really good with money. Just because somebody has spent the last, since they were 18 and now they're 25, just because they've spent those years partying, traveling around the world, saying they don't know what it is that they want, that it doesn't mean that they can now not spend the next 5 years cultivating and refining and becoming an expert in an area of life. Don't be so quick to judge people based on where they've been and based on what they've done. Human beings, we can change, we can grow, we can develop, we can alter the course of our life, even though we've already, in other people's eyes, already messed up, or we've fucked up, or we've made bad choices, right? I believe every human has this, the dignity of choice. We can make remarkable choices that can alter our life. And I think that a lot of us, we tend to lay people by the wayside, believing that people in our life are this way, or they've always been like that. I know people who, in all honesty, were dickheads. When I was younger and I was growing up, I know people who everybody was like, he's a dickhead, he's an arsehole, he's whatever. And now, the same people have either got into relationships or they've had different commitments with a child or with work, and their maturity has almost exponentially changed overnight because they have, they've gone through a transition, or they've gone through a metamorphosis in their life, or they've hit a low point. And so what I want to encourage you to do, and is something that I'm constantly having to do, is stop looking at people in your life who may have fucked up, whether it be your children, it be a mate of yours, it be your neighbor. Don't look at them as a product of where they've been, but look at them for what they could be. Because when you begin to look at them for what they could be, you're going to treat them differently. You're going to treat people in your life differently when you believe that they have capacity, that they are basically a seed which is waiting to become a fruit, right? all of a sudden an acorn waiting to flourish and grow into an oak tree. When you begin to see people from that parameter, from that paradigm, you begin to treat people differently. You begin to see them in a very different light. And if you can do that, I just think as a man, you're going to become a better human being. As a human being, in your ability to help people, in your ability to inspire people, you're going to be able to elevate yourself to a whole different level. You know, I always say to people that one of the things that most of us fail to understand is that we have either knowledge, either a skill, either a connection that can help somebody in our life. If we would just stop thinking about me and what I'm getting and how I'm succeeding and how they're different to me and how they're a loser and I'm a winner and how they're a lowlife and how they've made such stupid choices and how they fucked up again. If you stop seeing people from that perspective and you start seeing people from the perspective of everybody fucks up, everyone messes up, we all make mistakes, we all can grow, you would begin to realize, oh, actually, I know a book which this guy can read that can help him. I tell you what, I've seen this article that I think would be really useful for this person. I tell you what, he's struggling to get work and struggling to find what he wants to do in life. I know somebody who went through the same kind of journey, and why don't I get him to get in contact with them? In fact, I'm going to arrange for us to go out for a meal and connect these two people. All of a sudden, when you start doing that kind of stuff is like really simple, basic stuff, but you become a better human being, but also you begin to elevate yourself and your life and people around you to a whole different level. That's what I would recommend to you. But obviously, like I've always said to you guys, this is your life. You got to live it how you want to live it. Don't allow people to tell you how you should be living your life. I'm only making a suggestion. You may say all the things that I've said are completely wrong. You disagree. That's okay. As long as you know that that is what you agree with and that's the choice that you've made, then that's okay. So that's what I wanted to share with you in this week's episode. But what do you think? Have you got yourself a journal yet? Have you started journaling? Have you started writing down ideas? Have you started refining your philosophy? What is it that you're going to be able to pass down onto your children? Right? What have you learned? You know, one of the things that I say to people to close this off is I say to people, start writing your book. Start writing the story of your life in a book. Because everything that you've learned, start writing it. Literally, go on Microsoft Word or download it or whatever you want to do. I don't know. Download it illegally. I don't know. It's your life. You decide what you want. Pay $79.99 to get it. Whatever. Start writing down the story of your life. What is it that you've learned? What would you like your best friend's children to know because you're their godchildren? What mistakes have you made with money that you say you want them to know not to repeat again? What about your sister? You have sisters now and you've learned things about guys that actually would be pretty useful for them. Why don't you start journaling it? Start writing it down. Start refining it. Do you see what I mean? This is how you elevate yourself as a man. This is how you reach higher levels of wisdom. That's what I wanted to share with you this week. I hope it's been useful and can help you in your life somehow. If you think this will be useful for someone, share it with them, like it, all the usual stuff, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll speak to you soon.